Zanele had always believed in love, the kind that made you feel safe, seen, and special. So when she met Thulani, everything just felt right. He was charming, successful, and knew exactly what to say to make her feel like the only woman in the world. He worked as a banker in Lusaka, always dressed sharp, always had a warm smile. Zanele, a passionate school teacher, felt lucky, almost too lucky. His family welcomed her like a daughter. His mother called her our girl. He brought her flowers just because, planned weekend getaways, whispered promises of forever. He made her laugh, made her feel chosen. Her friends teased her, saying she had found her fairy tale, and in those moments, Zanele believed it too. But even in the happiest of days, there were little things, moments that felt off, like how he never let her hold his phone, or how he would go silent for hours and brush it off as work stress. But Zanele told herself not to overthink. After all, love meant trust, didn't it? She would lie in bed some nights, looking at the ceiling, wondering why her heart felt heavy when her life seemed so perfect, but she always shook it off. "I'm just scared," she'd whisper to herself. "Things are finally good. Don't ruin it." What Zanele didn't know then was that the perfect beginning she was living in was carefully painted over a lie. And soon, the cracks in that picture would start to show. Looking back now, Zanele wonders how she didn't see it sooner. The signs were all there, clear as day. But when you're in love, you don't always want the truth. You want the story in your head to be real. You want the fairy tale to last just a little longer. It started small. Thulani would get phone calls late at night and step outside to answer them. She asked once, and he smiled and said, "Just work stuff, babe. You wouldn't understand." And she believed him, because why wouldn't she? He had always treated her like a queen. A small part of her felt uneasy, but she convinced herself she was overthinking. "Don't be paranoid," she told herself. "You finally have someone good. Don't ruin it." Then there were the work trips. So many of them. Zimbabwe, South Africa, sometimes just out of town. They always came last minute. He never shared details, never let her drop him at the airport. He'd say, "It's just a quick trip, nothing exciting," and kiss her on the forehead before disappearing for days. His phone was always locked, not just with a code, with face recognition, fingerprint, everything. Zanele noticed it, but again, she brushed it off. Maybe he's just private, she thought. Not everyone is comfortable sharing everything. But deep down, the doubt had started to grow roots. Her friends began to notice too. They asked questions. Her sister once said, "He's too smooth, Zanele. Doesn't anything feel off to you?" But Zanele defended him every time. "You don't know him like I do," she would say. "He loves me. He's just busy." She even started avoiding those conversations. It was easier not to hear the truth. There was a time she found an unfamiliar earring in the car. Just one. She held it up, her voice shaking. Thulani looked surprised, then laughed. "It must be one of your friends," he said smoothly. "Didn't you all go for lunch last week?" She wanted to believe him, so she did. She tucked the earring away and never asked again. Now, Zanele realizes that it wasn't just that she missed the red flags. She saw them, but called them something else. She called them stress, work, privacy, and most of all, she called them love. She didn't want to believe that the man who held her hand in public could be hiding anything in private. She was in love with the idea of Thulani, the man who made promises, who looked perfect on the outside. And in that illusion, she ignored her own instincts. Love, she learned the hard way, can make even the smartest people blind. The truth was always there, sitting quietly between the locked phone and the fake smiles. But when your heart is full, your eyes sometimes stay closed. Zanele hadn't planned to go to Thulani's apartment that day. In fact, she was supposed to be out of town with her students on a school trip to Livingstone. Bags were packed, itinerary set, everything ready, until a sudden storm warning forced the school to cancel the trip at the very last minute. The students were disappointed, and so was Zanele. She had been looking forward to the change of scenery, but now, with her weekend suddenly free, she decided to do something spontaneous. Thulani had told her he'd be away in Zimbabwe for a work meeting. He said it was a quick turnaround, just 2 days, maybe 3. She remembered his exact words. "Don't miss me too much, babe." They had laughed on the phone, and she had wished him a safe trip. But as she sat alone in her quiet apartment that Friday afternoon, a little voice inside her said, "Go see him, surprise him, leave a note, maybe cook something for when he gets back." She smiled at the idea. It felt sweet, thoughtful. She imagined his face lighting up when he'd see the food she left, the note on his pillow. She packed a small bag, grabbed the spare key he had given her months ago, and took a cab to his place. The weather was gloomy, and the city streets felt oddly still. As the car approached his building, Zanele felt something strange in her chest, like nervous excitement, but heavier. She shook it off. Maybe I just missed him more than I thought. When she got to the door, she stood there for a few seconds longer than usual. Something didn't feel right. She could hear faint music from inside, soft, slow, and unfamiliar. Her fingers hesitated on the keys. Then she laughed to herself. "It's probably the neighbor," she whispered. "Don't be silly." She unlocked the door gently, wanting the surprise to be perfect. But the moment the door opened, the music became clearer, and then she heard something else. Laughter. A woman's laughter. Zanele froze. She stood in the doorway, keys still in her hand, her heart pounding like a drum. The apartment smelled like perfume, sweet, strong, and not hers. Her mind raced. Did Thulani come back early? Did he bring a colleague home? But that didn't make sense. She took one step forward, then another, and then, over the back of the couch, she saw it. 2 heads, close together, too close. A man and a woman, Thulani, and Ayanda, her best friend. For a moment, Zanele couldn't move. The world felt frozen, the air too heavy to breathe. Her ears rang, her skin turned cold, and everything inside her started to break, slowly, silently, like glass cracking from the inside. This trip wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And in just a few seconds, her entire world shifted. What she thought was love, what she thought was safe, was gone. And the storm outside hadn't even started yet. Zanele's hand trembled as she held the spare key in front of Thulani's door. Her heart was beating so fast, it almost drowned out the sound of laughter coming from inside. A woman's laugh. Light, playful, way too familiar. She knew that voice, and that's what made her stomach twist into a knot. She told herself it couldn't be what she thought. Maybe the TV was on. Maybe someone from the building had stopped by. Maybe anything else. But deep down, she already knew. Something was wrong. Her fingers felt numb as she pushed the key into the lock. It turned slowly, painfully, like even the door didn't want her to see what was behind it. The door creaked open, and the moment felt unreal, like walking into someone else's life, someone else's nightmare. The apartment was dim, lit by soft lamps and candles. There was music playing, low and romantic, and then there they were, on the couch, Thulani and Ayanda, her best friend, their legs tangled, heads close, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Thulani was shirtless. Ayanda had one of his t-shirts on, the one Zanele had bought him last Christmas. For a split second, they didn't even notice her. Time felt like it stopped, like the world hit pause just long enough for Zanele's heart to break in full. When Ayanda finally turned and saw her, the smile dropped from her face so fast it was like watching a mask fall off. Thulani looked up too, not shocked, not scared, just blank, like he couldn't even bother to pretend he was sorry. Zanele didn't speak. She couldn't. Her breath caught in her throat, stuck somewhere between a scream and a sob. Her eyes locked with Ayanda's, and 1,000 memories flashed in her mind. School days, late-night talks, secrets shared, tears wiped, laughter that once felt like forever. All of it shattered in that 1 second. Ayanda opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Then finally, a whisper. "Zanele, it's not what it looks like." A sentence so weak, it only made the pain sharper. Zanele stepped back, as if her body knew to run before her brain could catch up. She felt dizzy, like the walls were closing in. Her fingers still held the key, the same key Thulani had once said meant trust. Now, it just felt like a joke. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to cry, but all she could do was stand there, heart cracked open, chest heavy, soul silent. Nothing made sense anymore. Not her love, not her friendship, not her future. That door she opened didn't just lead to a room. It led to the truth, the raw, ugly truth that everything she had built, every dream, every plan, every "I love you" had been built on lies. And now, nothing would ever be the same again. They jumped apart like children caught doing something wrong, but it was already too late. The damage was done. The truth was out. And the worst part? Thulani didn't even look sorry. He didn't panic. He didn't rush to explain. He just stood there, arms crossed, watching her like she was a stranger who had walked into the wrong room. Zanele stood frozen in the doorway, her breath caught in her throat, her whole body trembling. Ayanda was the first to speak, her voice cracked, soft and shaky. "Zanele, please. It just happened." Just happened. Those two words hit like a slap to the face. Zanele felt her knees weaken. She reached for the wall to steady herself. It just happened? This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some one-time slip. This was betrayal, deep, sharp, and cruel, by the two people she had loved most. Her heart started pounding so loudly she could barely hear herself scream. But she did scream, a sound so raw and painful, it didn't even feel like it came from her. It was everything, the heartbreak, the shock, the confusion, the fury, all pouring out at once. Her voice echoed through the apartment, bouncing off walls that had once held laughter and love. Ayanda started crying, mumbling something about feelings, and not meaning to hurt her, but Zanele couldn't even process the words. Thulani stayed silent, like a statue, like he didn't owe her anything. That silence was louder than any scream. It screamed, "I don't care." Zanele's chest ached like something was physically breaking inside her. Her hands shook, her legs were weak, and tears ran down her face without stopping. She looked around the room, at the candles, the half-empty wine glasses, the blanket they had shared. Every detail was a stab in the heart. She shouted things she didn't remember. Words just spilled out, angry, broken, desperate. "How could you? You were my best friend. You told me you loved me." Her voice cracked again and again, until it finally gave out, leaving only sobs behind. No one came to comfort her. No one tried to hold her. The people who hurt her just stood there, one crying fake tears, the other cold and quiet. Zanele realized then that she was completely alone, not just in that moment but in the relationship. Maybe she had been alone for a long time, and she just didn't want to see it. Everything she thought was real had collapsed in one night. Her love, her friendship, her trust, all shattered into pieces she couldn't pick up. She turned and walked out, her vision blurry, her body heavy, her heart torn to shreds. The rain outside had started to fall, but she didn't care. It matched how she felt inside, cold, soaked, lost. There were no more words left to say, only silence, and the sound of her world falling apart. She didn't look back. She walked out of that apartment and just kept going. She didn't care that it was raining. She didn't care that her clothes were getting soaked, or that people stared as she passed. The cold drops hitting her skin were nothing compared to the storm raging inside her. Her heart felt like it had been ripped out and stepped on. Everything she thought she knew, every word, every promise, every memory, meant nothing now. Her body moved, but her mind was numb. She couldn't even cry anymore. The tears had dried up, replaced by a deep emptiness she didn't know how to explain. She had nowhere to go, no home to run to. Her parents had passed years ago. She had cut ties with old friends because she'd been so focused on Thulani. Even Ayanda, the one she trusted like a sister, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. She didn't even have enough money on her. She had just planned to stop by his place. She hadn't planned to have her entire life flipped upside down. By the time she reached the bus station, her shoes were soaked and her hands were shaking. She bought a one-way ticket to Ndola with the little cash she had in her purse. She didn't know why she chose Ndola. She had no plan, no job waiting, no one there, but something in her just needed to get away from Lusaka, from the memories, from the lies. The bus ride felt like a blur. She stared out the window the whole time, raindrops racing each other down the glass. Her reflection looked like a stranger's, pale, broken, tired. She felt like a ghost of the woman she used to be. When she arrived in Ndola, it was still raining. The city felt quieter, slower. She wandered the streets, unsure where to go. Her stomach growled. Her clothes clung to her skin. Her legs ached from walking. She passed by a small church with a banner outside. Shelter, food, hope. She stopped. Her pride told her to keep walking, but her heart, what was left of it, told her she needed help. Inside the shelter, it was warm and quiet. A kind-looking woman handed her a towel and a cup of tea. Zanele didn't speak at first. She just sat in the corner, holding the cup, like it was the only solid thing in her world. For the first time in hours, she felt a tiny bit safe. She was at rock bottom. No home, no love, no plan. But something about surviving that night gave her a strange strength. She didn't know what tomorrow would look like. She just knew she had to make it there, one step at a time. She was soaked, heartbroken, and alone, but she was still standing. And somehow, That meant she hadn't lost everything. Zanele had been at the shelter for 2 days. She barely spoke to anyone, still wrapped in the fog of heartbreak. She helped with small chores, sweeping floors, washing dishes, just to keep her mind busy. Nights were the hardest. The silence made her remember everything, the betrayal, the pain, the way Thulani had looked at her like she didn't matter. But on the 3rd morning, everything changed. That's when she met Mama Lindiwe. She walked in like she owned the world, not in a proud way, but with a quiet confidence that made people stop and notice. She wore a long, colourful chitenge dress and carried a bag full of notebooks and fresh bread. Her eyes were warm, but sharp. She looked around the room and walked straight up to Zanele, like she'd been expecting her. "You," Mama said with a smile. "What's your name?" Zanele hesitated, then answered softly. "Zanele." Mama Lindiwe nodded, like she already knew. "You've got strong eyes. You've been through something." Zanele didn't respond, her lips pressed into a thin line, trying to keep everything from spilling out. Mama didn't push. She sat beside her and handed her a slice of bread. "You're not the first girl to come in here with a broken heart and empty hands," she said gently. "But you have something in you. I can see it." And for some reason, Zanele believed her. Over the next few days, Mama Lindiwe kept coming back. She wasn't just there to hand out food. She ran small workshops for women on money, business, confidence, healing. She told stories about how she used to sell vegetables from a small stall, how she grew that into a clothing shop, then a catering company. She had failed before, been cheated, lost everything, but she always started again. One afternoon, after the session, Mama pulled Zanele aside. "What do you love?" she asked. Zanele was quiet. "I used to love teaching," she finally said. "I was a teacher. I used to tutor kids after school too." Mama's eyes lit up. "Then that's where we start," she said. "You're not finished. You're just beginning again." And that's when something shifted inside Zanele. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Small, fragile, but real. Mama Lindiwe gave her a second-hand notebook, a used phone, and a list of parents nearby who were looking for tutors. "Just talk to them," she said. "Let them hear your passion. The rest will come." Zanele spent that evening writing lesson plans by candlelight. It was just a notebook, just some names, but to her, it felt like a door opening. She still had no house, no fancy clothes, no perfect life, but she had a plan, and that plan came from a stranger who walked into her darkness and lit a candle without asking for anything in return. Mama Lindiwe didn't just feed her, she reminded her she could rise again. Zanele started with one student, just one, a little girl named Tasha who struggled with reading. Her mother, a market vendor, couldn't afford much, but she trusted Zanele because of the way she spoke, calm, patient, full of heart. Zanele taught Tasha under a mango tree near the shelter, using chalk and a small board Mama Lindiwe had found for her. That first lesson lit something inside her, something she thought was gone. Purpose. Word spread slowly. One parent told another, then another. Soon, Zanele had 5 students, then 10. She printed small flyers with her last few kwacha, walked miles to schools and churches, spoke to anyone who would listen. Every child mattered. She poured her heart into every lesson, treating each student like they were her only one. She called it BrightMind tutoring. At first, it was just a name on paper, but in her heart, it was her second chance. The kids came with all kinds of struggles, failing grades, low confidence, broken homes. But Zanele understood pain. She knew how to lift someone up, because she had once needed someone to lift her. Her tutoring wasn't just about math or reading. It was about building kids who believed in themselves. A year later, she moved into a tiny rented room and turned it into her first classroom. She painted the walls herself, added colourful posters, and used crates as chairs. It wasn't fancy, but it was filled with love. She worked morning to night, sometimes forgetting to eat, sometimes breaking down in quiet moments, but she never stopped. By year 2, she had hired 2 more tutors, young women from the shelter, just like her, looking for a way out. She trained them herself, paid them what she could. They weren't just building a business, they were building each other. She rebranded to BrightMind Africa and launched free weekend workshops for students who couldn't afford private help. People started to notice. Local schools invited her to speak. Parents from other towns called her, asking for help. She started offering online lessons through WhatsApp and Zoom. She didn't know much about tech, but she learned. Every day, she learned something new. By the third year, her business had grown beyond Ndola. She had teams in Lusaka, Kitwe, and Livingston. Her story had been featured on a local radio show. From Betrayal to BrightMind. People cried when they heard it. Sponsors reached out. A publishing company offered to partner with her to create study guides. And through it all, Zanele stayed grounded. She still wore simple dresses. She still taught every week. And every time she walked into a classroom, she remembered the girl who once sat alone in the rain, heartbroken and lost. That girl had built something out of nothing. A life, a purpose, a name. Zanele didn't just survive, she rose. And she built herself into the woman no one saw coming. It was a quiet Thursday morning when they showed up. Thulani and Ayanda, just like that. No warning, no shame. Nothing in their eyes, but desperation. They walked through the glass doors of BrightMind Africa's head office in Lusaka like they belonged there, like this place hadn't been built from the ashes of their betrayal. But they didn't get far. The two security guards at the entrance, tall, firm, and well-trained, stepped in front of them immediately. "Do you have an appointment?" one of them asked. Thulani looked confused. Ayanda clutched her handbag a little tighter. They clearly hadn't expected this. "We're here to see Zanele," Thulani said, trying to sound calm, confident, like old times. But the name didn't carry the same weight anymore. Not here, not now. "Sorry, Miss Zanele doesn't take walk-ins," the guard replied. "If you'd like to book a meeting, email the executive assistant." They stood there, stunned. The receptionist, who knew the whole story from whispered bits and pieces over the years, glanced at them, but said nothing. She simply picked up the phone and called upstairs. Zanele was in her office, reviewing a proposal for a partnership with the Ministry of Education. She wore a fitted navy suit, her natural hair in a soft bun, and her desk neatly arranged, calm, focused, powerful. When her assistant knocked and quietly said, "Thulani and Ayanda are downstairs," Zanele didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She looked up slowly, closed her laptop, and smiled the kind of smile that only comes from healing. "Tell security to ask them to leave," she said. "This is not their story anymore." Downstairs, the guards delivered the message. Thulani tried to argue. "Just tell her it's me. She'll want to see me." Ayanda, quieter now, just looked down. Maybe she understood, maybe not. But it didn't matter, because Zanele had already seen all she needed to. Years ago, the guards stood firm. She said no, and just like that, the man who once had her heart, and the friend who once held her secrets, were turned away at the doors of the empire she built without them. Zanele watched it all from the security camera feed on her screen, not out of spite, but closure. They were smaller now, not because life had crushed them, but because she had grown. She thought she'd feel anger, or triumph, or even sadness, but what she felt was peace. They were just two people from another chapter, a chapter she had closed long ago. She turned back to her laptop, the proposal still waiting. Outside, her staff buzzed with ideas. Kids laughed in a classroom below. Her world had moved on, not out of revenge, but out of growth. They had returned, but she had already left them behind. And that, without a word spoken, was the real victory. Zanele stands on stages now, in schools, community halls, even conferences filled with powerful women. But when she speaks, it's not with pride or show-off words. It's with truth. She tells them what nobody told her when her world collapsed. "I thought my life was over," she says. "I thought heartbreak would be the final chapter, but it wasn't. It was just the beginning." She tells them about the girl who cried alone in the rain, about the betrayal, the silence, the shame. And then she tells them about the woman she became, not because someone saved her, but because she chose to save herself. The girls in the room always sit up a little straighter when she speaks. Some wipe tears, others nod quietly, like they've been waiting for someone to say those exact words. "You don't need him to say you matter," Zanele tells them. "You don't need anyone to choose you. Choose yourself. Build yourself, even if you're building from the dust." Her business, BrightMind Africa, now mentors hundreds of young women. She hires girls from shelters, trains them, gives them purpose, just like Mama Lindiwe once did for her. Zanele's world didn't just survive the storm, it grew roots in it. And now, she's planting seeds everywhere she goes. She doesn't carry bitterness, just wisdom, just fire, just a voice that reminds others, you can rise, Even after it all falls apart, her heart was once broken, but brick by brick she rebuilt it into a kingdom of her own.